我重新开始一下。晚上好，我是验房老刘，现在开始今天的讲座啊。今天讲座是讲关于氡气的啊，主讲人是安主。讲座开始之前呢，我先做一些简单的介绍啊。我本人呢是做验房的啊，我是验房师，也是工程师。我做了这个工作呢，主要就是做这个民用房、商业房的检验，还有做这个康斗文件的 review。讲座开始之前呢，先说一下安全啊。我以前做的讲座每次都讲一下安全，今天呢讲一下叫 Ice Clean，讲一下这个的用途啊。现在是冬天啊，特别是今天又下雪，这个 Ice Clean 是干什么用的？就是防滑、防摔的啊。所以说，比如说特别适用于就说是冬天在外面干活、做工作，或者是比方说家里有一些就说是老人，或者是有时候在外面走路啊，这种是它的工作原理呢，就说是。就是这种小凸出来的地方呢，可能卡到冰里头啊，就说是用的时候就带到鞋上，然后呢，你就像上面这个图了，它这个就靠这个来防滑这几个点儿啊。当然了，如果路上没有雪的话，你可以把这个转过来啊，这是一个安全的就是防滑的啊，这个实际上很有用的啊。并不是很贵，在这个很多商店都有卖的，所以说，如果这个需要的话，可以去这个商店买，这样主要是这个防滑，这样很有用。好，下面介绍一下咱们的今天的主讲人，这个安主啊。安主呢，他是专门专业做这个氡气测试和这个减排的，他同时是 CARST 的理事。CARST 是干什么？就是 Canadian Sorry, Andrew, what's CARST stands for? Is that the Canadian Radon Scientist and
Canadian
Technologist?
Association of Radon Scientists and Technologists.
Okay, thank you. 他是那儿的理事，然后呢，同时呢也是这个 C-NRPP stands for Canadian National Radon Proficiency Program， 他是那儿的政策顾问啊。然后呢，他这边呢，他这个公司叫 Radon Care 啊，这是他的电话，这是他们公司的网站。然后呢，为了今天这个呢，他今天为了今天的讲座，他还特意做了一些优惠的销售啊。因为他也销售一些这个测试 Radon 的这个设备啊。如果今天你要是购买的话，今天给了一个这个 promo code， 就是你要用这个 code 上他的网站。购买他的东西的话便宜10%啊，这个code呢就是老刘10啊，就说是全都要大写啊。这个是今天专门为这个讲座而提供的这些优惠啊。好的，我想我讲的主要就这些，现在呢我就准备然后就让安主开始他的这个真正的讲座。我想说的是。如果大家在听讲座当中呢，有什么问题，随时提出来，这也是他希望的。这个问题呢，可以用英语问，也可以用汉语问啊。如果用汉语问，我到时候翻译一下就行了啊。所以说，希望大家有问题随时随时问。Hi Andrew, I think that's all all my introduction. So I hope, I assume you understand. I don't know whether you understand what I said or not, but. Yeah, basically what I did just kind of a basic introduction on myself and also on you. I guess with no further ado, I'd like to turn over you so you could just share your screen and then start our presentation. I'll stop sharing right now.
Thank you very much. All right, so you need to make me the host so that I can do the share.
Yep. Now you are the host.
All right, hello everybody. Thanks for coming for the presentation. Yeah, so we're going to do a presentation on radon, a lot of the myths versus reality. If anybody has any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to ask right away. I find that there's a lot more that comes out of these presentations. If you do have any question, to let me know what the question is right off the bat during the slide, and I can answer it right then. The big part of the presentation is going to focus on some of the myths versus the reality. There's a lot of information about radon online right now. And there's a lot of it there's a lot of very good information, and there's a lot of very bad information of stuff that's not true. So I'm going to try to go over a bit about the general knowledge of radon, what you need to know, and yeah, some of the true things versus some of the ones not so much. Yeah, so my name is Andrew. I'm the owner operator of Radon Care. We specialize in residential and commercial mitigations. We also do measurement. We do some measurements in large buildings with some school boards and some other commercial buildings as well. I'm also a board member of CARST and a member of the advisory board for C-NRPP. And I got into the radon industry after about a decade in HVAC experience. So I installed furnaces, heating systems, which lends itself very well to the radon mitigation business. A lot of the things that I learned from there I was able to take over and do over here. We also are research partners with the University of Calgary's Evict Radon research campaign. And that's one of the reasons we were able to get involved with them, is because of my background in HVAC. They wanted to do some research on how HVAC can affect radon levels. All right, so here's a brief outline of what the presentation will be. First one would be why radon is a big deal and what it is. How you test for radon, which is of course a very important part. How you reduce radon if you find it. The good news, the short version, is radon is a fixable problem. So if there's radon in your house, don't worry. We're never going to measure radon in a house and say, too bad, we can't fix it. It is a very, very fixable problem. And then what we should do about it. And here, as I mentioned, if anybody has any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to ask away. All right, why radon is a big deal? Well, it's a health risk. Radon is thought to be the #1 cause of lung cancer among non-smokers. According to Health Canada's estimates, if your radon is over 600 becquerels per cubic meter, you have about a 1 in 20 chance of developing lung cancer. Versus something like smoking. Smoking was thought to be about a 1 in 10 chance of lung cancer. Interesting statistic on that as well. If somebody smokes cigarettes and is also exposed to high levels of radon for a long term, their chances of getting lung cancer goes up to about 1 in 3. And yeah, so it's a very big deal. Another thing about radon, it is a cause of lung cancer. It's not a cause of anything else. Meaning radon's not going to make you tired. It's not going to make you feel sick. It's not going to make you lethargic. There are absolutely no signs or symptoms of radon being in your house. The only way to know is to either develop lung cancer or to do a test for it. Yeah, #1 cause among smokers, #1 cause, pardon me, among non-smokers, and #2 cause of lung cancer overall. Another thing, radon is very high in Alberta. So according to...
sorry, Andrew, what's the #1 cause for lung cancer?
Smoking.
Oh, okay.
So it's, yeah, smoking is the #1 cause. So radon is the #2 cause overall, or the #1 cause among non-smokers.
Thank you.
Yeah, so radon is very, very common here. According to the University of Calgary, in a slide I'll show in a second, radon in Alberta and Saskatchewan, if we were a country, we'd be the 2nd highest in the world for radon exposure. So it is a big problem here. Going by the Health Canada guideline of 200 becquerels per cubic meter, 1 in 5 Alberta homes have high radon. If we go by the World Health Organization guideline, which starts as low as 100 becquerels per cubic meter, it's 1 in 2 homes that are above the guideline. Another point is children are more susceptible.
Sorry, Andrew, I have to stop you because people think they cannot hear, but I could hear you no problem.
I can hear.
Anybody else? Can you hear?
I'll try to move the computer a little bit better. Is this any better?
Yes, seems working now. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay. So yeah, 1 in 5 homes is above the Health Canada guideline, and 1 in 2 homes is above the World Health Organization guideline. Another important thing about radon to know is children are more susceptible to radon damage from radon. That's for a couple of reasons. The main one being children breathe a lot faster. The younger someone is, the faster they're going to breathe. The older we get, the slower we breathe. And if you're being exposed to radon because it's in the air, if you breathe twice as fast, you're going to get twice the dose. The good news is radon exposure is entirely preventable. As I mentioned, and I'll get to in the mitigation part of the presentation, it is a very, very fixable problem. We have never had a building, either commercial or residential, that we were not able to fix.
Sorry, Andrew, if you don't mind, maybe I could do for the previous slide, maybe I could do a quick summary because they also are very important. The first section basically 第一部分来讲呢，就说是在阿省的每5个家庭里边就有一个的这个氡气的这个含量是比较高的。第二部分讲了这个children呢，这个小孩呢，这个 radon 呢对小孩的可能危害更大一些。这一部分讲呢，就说是讲这个氡气呢是完全是可以防治的啊，这里讲这3点。Yeah, please continue. Thank you.
Thank you. One question that we get quite often is, if radon is such a big deal, why have I not heard about it? So I like to present this as well. This year alone, Health Canada sent over 450,000 postcards in Alberta. They've been doing this every year. They've been increasing every year the amount of postcards that are going out. And they send those out to everyone's house to try to inform people to test their homes for radon. The Lung Association of Alberta, BC, and Saskatchewan and Manitoba have also all got together for an Evict Radon campaign. Evict Radon, or pardon me, for a Tackle Radon campaign, which is a program where they sponsor CFL and they have some advertisements around football to get people to test their home. So there's a lot of information going out right now, and this shows some of the partners of agencies from Health Canada to Evict Radon, which is the University of Calgary, Take Action on Radon, the Canadian Cancer Society, where we're all trying to inform the public to test their homes. Evict Radon, this is another very neat source to check out. Evict Radon is the largest research confederation in the world investigating the health risks of radon. You can go to evictradon.ca, so that's the name of the University of Calgary study. And there they have a lot of studies that are published on interesting findings that they've had that they've published in different journals. One of the things, kind of an upcoming study that I'm pretty excited about, is what we're calling a toenail clipping study. So when you breathe in radon, radon decays into polonium, bismuth, and eventually lead. And that lead is stable and it stays in your toenail clipping where they can measure it. So they're currently doing research to see if they will be able to take someone's toenail clipping, measure the amount of lead-210 in it, and by that, determine the exposure of that individual to radon over their lifetime. So this is ongoing research. They're currently, I believe they're building the lab right now. They haven't determined if this is possible yet, but it's a kind of an exciting study to see how that's going to turn out. And yeah, as I mentioned, research shows it's common here. And this is according to a study that was published a couple of years ago in 2019 from the University of Calgary. And they determined that if Alberta and Saskatchewan were a country, we would be the second highest radon exposed population on Earth, behind number 1, which would be Poland. Here's a map from Evict Radon. This is based on, I think this came out a couple of years ago. Yeah, 2014 to 2020, based on the data they had at that time.
Sorry for the interruption, Andrew. Could we go back to the previous slide? I just like to emphasize, maybe in Chinese. 这张 slide 就说是在这个 radon 含量里边呢，就说是这个Andrew, I believe this refers to the exposure, the number of the population, right? Or the radon highest radon concentration. Number 1, number 2, right? Andrew, can you hear me?
Okay. Absolutely. Yeah, and here's just a map. I'll leave this up for a second. So this is the average indoor concentration based on the study. So as you can see, the prairies are, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba are a little bit higher than the rest of the country. This is a lot up in conversation. So radon is a decay product of radium, where radon comes from. So there's radium in the ground, which is a solid. Over time, radium decays and it turns into radon gas. If anybody has been out for a nice drive to go to Radium Hot Springs, it's a very nice place. I went out there a lot as a kid. We have a town only a few hours away that we actually named after radium. And it was named radium because in, I believe, early in the century when they settled there, they found a lot of radium in the water. And that's where it's got its name from.
Well, that's interesting to know. Yeah, I went to this place. You're saying is there where is this radium located? Is that underground in the soil? You see in the water?
So when they settled there, they found radium in the water, and it wasn't, I believe, in massive amounts, but it was because of the radium they found in the water that they named the town. Now the water is safe. I'm not trying to tell anybody to not go to the water out there. It's not high enough that it's going to cause any issues, but that is where it got its name from.
Thank you.
So what is radon? So here's a map. So radon is a decay product of uranium and eventually radium. So over time, one element breaks down to another. So uranium, which exists for about 4.5 billion years, will eventually decay into thorium, protactinium, uranium, thorium, and then into radium. After radium, which is a solid, decays, it turns into radon, which is a gas. Problem from radon comes from its short half-life. So radon's only around for about 3.8 days, after which it decays into polonium. When the radon decays, there's 2 protons and 2 neutrons that shoot off the nucleus at half the speed of light. And when radon-222 releases 2 protons and 2 neutrons, it becomes polonium-218. Those 2 protons and 2 neutrons, when they shoot off the nucleus, shoot off at half the speed of light. And that's called an alpha particle. That's the part of radon that we're actually concerned with. If you breathe in radon as a gas and you breathe radon out as a gas, it can't actually do anything to you. But because it's constantly breaking down, therein lies the danger of it. Those 2 protons and 2 neutrons, if they hit your DNA in just the wrong way, they can cause a damage or they can cause a mutation, which can lead to lung cancer.
Sorry, if you don't mind, maybe I just do a Chinese kind of translation here.
Yeah, for sure.
So 这边主要讲这个，就说是 radon 是怎么形成的，它就是一种放射性的物质啊，从这个 U238这边开始衰变啊，它衰变的周期有的像 U238的话，这个衰变周期很长，然后它一个一个衰变之后呢，它就释放出来这种质子或者中子，然后呢这个分子就一直变成这个油呢变成这个土，可能这个汉语一个金字旁一个土。然后最终一直衰变了，从 U238衰变到 U234，最终呢，这个好像叫砷，一个金字旁一个砷，然后最后呢，到这个镭 ，radium 是镭啊，元素金属，一个金字旁一个镭，然后镭了再衰变啊，它衰变周期是1600年，然后最后才成为所谓的氡啊，你要查元素周期里边的有叫氡，这就是咱所谓的氡气。氡气呢，它会这个释放出来一种质子，就是叫阿尔法。这种离子呢会打到这个肺细胞上，会导致一些损坏。这就是为什么这个氡气呢，所谓的氡气会对产生肺癌的这种原理。Yeah, I'm done with the Chinese translation for this slide. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have this slide here. So this is not actually radon. I believe this is a piece of americium, but this shows the decay. So radon's not the only thing that releases alpha particles. Alpha radiation can come from several different things. This video, I believe, is kind of neat because it shows alpha radiation coming off of the americium. So what they do is they take a piece of it, they put it into a chamber of alcohol vapor, and when I play this video, you're going to see a bunch of little lines shooting off, kind of like jets shooting away. Every one of those lines is from the 2 protons and 2 neutrons shooting off and leaving a little trail. And we've actually done this at trade shows before, and you can see it. You can see it with your eyes. You don't need a microscope or anything else. If we can make this work well. Yeah, there we go. I'm just trying to figure out how to get back to it. Can you see the video right now?
Yes. I think you might just need to close from the top.
Sorry, are we back to the presentation?
Yes, we back.
Okay, there we go. I didn't expect that to open up in another window. So some radon facts. So we've known about radon for a very, very long time. It was discovered actually by Marie Curie, which was over 100 years ago. Sorry, pardon me, that audio is not supposed to be going on. Sorry about that. The video normally opens in the slideshow. It normally doesn't open in YouTube. But yeah, so Marie Curie discovered radium and discovered that it was radioactive over 100 years ago. So this is just a quick slide. Just we've known about it for a very, very long time. It's not that exposure to radon, it's new that we're realizing that it has negative health effects. It's that it is only in the last 30 years or so that we've known that how high it can be in residential homes and how it can present a danger to people in their homes and not just in uranium mines in certain states. So the limits of radon. So they do vary depending on where you go in the world. As I said earlier in the presentation, if we go by Health Canada numbers, 1 in 5 houses is over. If we go by World Health Organization guidelines, it's 1 in 2 houses. Radon is measured in becquerels per cubic meter. Health Canada suggests that if your long-term average radon level is over 200 becquerels per cubic meter, you consider action for mitigation. The EPA suggests that you mitigate anything over 148, and the World Health Organization recommends mitigation as low as 100 becquerels per cubic meter. One thing we can say for sure, lower exposure is better. One of the reasons why the numbers vary between 100 and 2 is because it's hard to pinpoint exactly where the risk starts. Kind of like smoking cigarettes, nobody's really sure if 1 cigarette a day or 5 cigarettes a day or 1 cigarette a week is what's going to cause lung cancer. What we know is smoking is bad, and the lower we can have exposure to it, the better it is.
Question, Andrew, EPA, is that US standard, EPA?
Yeah, so that's Environmental Protection Agency, which is a standard in the US.
Yeah, I'm not sure why a Canadian standard kind of 200, right? The highest of these three.
Right. And we're not that there has been some talk of whether or not that's going to change in the future. We're not sure right now. One thing we can say, in 2008, the guidance from Health Canada was actually 800 becquerels per cubic meter. Wow. And then that's when they lowered it down to 200. One of the reasons for that was new research. Similar to asbestos, at one point, asbestos was, I mean, of course, a very good thing. They use it in construction, they use it in crayons. They even at one point were using asbestos in cigarette filters. As more and more research came out about it, they lowered the guideline for how much asbestos in the air is acceptable. And they continued to lower it over about a decade and a half until it finally came down to, we want 0 exposure to asbestos. The same thing is kind of happening with radon. More research is coming out, and we're realizing that it is a little bit more dangerous than we may have first thought.
Yeah. You say likely this number will go down through time, the limit.
I don't want to say likely. I want to say there's been discussion about it.
I see.
So
okay.
It's been a conversation that's being had. We're not sure if it's going to happen. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I'll do a quick Chinese interpretation here.
Of course.
他这边就是讲了，这上面这3个呢，就是讲了3个标准啊，一个是加拿大的标准是200啊，200呢就是指这个氡气的浓度200，就说是超过200了就认为是有害的啊，就应该做一些采取一些措施，这是加拿大标准。EPA 呢是美国的标准，美国的标准是148，就是在美国的话，你如果测量那个浓度超过148个单位的话，他就认为这个是超标了，就需要采取措施。而这个就是世界卫生组织的世界 WHO 这个标准是100啊，是100。然后这就是这张 slide。Andrew, would you mind go back to one more slide? Go back the previous one. I just like to ask a question about this lady, Mary Curie?
Marie Curie,
Mary
yes.
Curie. I believe she's from Poland. She's a scientist.
I
Okay.
think that's true. I don't actually know that off the top, but I knew that, but
No, but I was just curious. 我想说的是，这个女的呢，这个东西是谁发现的呢？就是叫 Mary，就是其实咱们汉语叫翻译成居里夫人啊，是她发现了这个东西。Okay, great. Please continue, Andy. Thank you.
Yeah. And interesting about Marie Curie as well, in the United States, and if you buy, there's some meters that if you buy from Amazon.com, they measure in picocuries per liter, as opposed to becquerels per cubic meter, which is what we use here. And we name it after Henry Becquerel, which was someone else that was came into play with discovering it.
I think you mean the U.S. The unit is by her name, right?
The U.S. is 1 picocurie per liter, so 1 picocurie equals 37 becquerels.
Okay, but are you suggesting the unit Curie that after this scientist's name, right? After her name, Mary Curie.
Exactly. Picocurie is after Marie Curie.
I see. Thank you.
So now, how do we test for radon? So there's a variety of ways to test for radon. The most common one in the past has been alpha track detectors. Alpha track detectors are what's shown at the top here. They come in different shapes and sizes. The way they work is you get one, you leave it in your home, and you leave it there for a minimum of 3 months up to a year. After the time period is, after the duration is complete, pardon me, you mail it off to the lab, they do the analysis, and they get the numbers back to you. A type of test that's becoming more and more popular as of late is the digital radon meter. The biggest reason why they're becoming more popular is because the price of them is going down, as with a lot of technology, of course, and they're becoming more accurate. The one down here, an Airthings Crantium Home, which is, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but it's a little gray box at the bottom. Those ones are on our website. Those ones are on sale for $179. And there's actually a discount code that we showed at the start of the presentation. I'm sure we'll include that at the end as well, that you can put in that will give you 10% off any radon test if you choose to pick one up. These little ones at the bottom, the gray box, the Crantium Home, those ones are very, very good. They give you a short-term average. So they'll show you what the radon is after a day. They'll show you what it is after a week. And they'll also automatically keep track of your long-term average. Importantly, with radon, we want to test for a long period of time. You never want to test for just one day, because the radon can be very high one day and low the next. And because radon is a long-term exposure, we want to know what we're breathing in over the period of a few months. High radon for a day won't do anything to us. It's only high exposure over a longer period of time. And also on our website, there are different types of tests. One of the things that we've been doing on the advisory board for C-NRPP over the last few years is we've actually been testing all the digital meters on the market. There are some, like the Airthings meters, that are very, very good. There are other meters that were actually just recalled. In fact, I think, yeah, right here. We were doing a study, so we took a whole bunch of the digital radon meters. In fact, we took every one we could find on the market, and we sent them off to a radon chamber in Saskatchewan. And we put them in the radon chamber, we set it to different levels of radon, and we measured how accurate they all were. There were these two that were just recalled a little while ago that we determined it was one of them. I forget which one it was, but when we opened it up to see why it was so inaccurate, we realized there was nothing in it that was even measuring radon. It was just making up a number. So the digital meters that are out there range from a very, very, very good to complete garbage that you don't want to use. Of course, the ones that we do have on our website are only the ones that work properly. We don't list any of the ones that are going to give you a wrong number.
A question. Yeah. For all those digital or portable ones, for the short-term testing, are these devices kind of certified or recognized by the authorities or by the government? I know long-term tests seem to be recommended, but for these digital ones, I'm not sure. Are they kind of certified or being accepted by the government?
So they're not so there is a digital meter out there that is recognized. That is the Crentium Pro. However, those meters are, I mean, they are rather expensive. We use those meters when we're testing schools and other locations. The consumer ones are not yet recognized by Health Canada. However, what I can tell you is that Health Canada has been purchasing them and donating them to libraries. So they've been using them. That's one of the reasons we're currently doing the study to see how good they are, is because we want to see if they're accurate enough that we will be able to, that in the future, Health Canada would be able to certify them as measurement devices. There are some libraries, like we ourselves, Radon Care, we've donated some to some libraries over 5 years ago. We still check them. We get them back every year or so, and we put them side by side with their calibrated meter, which is a more expensive meter that we send away for calibration twice a year, just to make sure it's reading correctly. Even the ones we've had out for 5 years, they're still measuring perfectly accurately after that time. But currently an Alpha Track is the only way that is recognized by Health Canada to do a proper test.
Andrew, would you mind go back to the previous slide? Just a question on those. I know the one you just point out to us, that one, you're saying the first reading would be after 24 hours. I know, do you have one kind of have an instant reading?
So there is one at the bottom that says the Radon Eye. That one will measure, that one will take an initial measurement in 10 minutes. However, it should only be used to measure in 10 minutes for the purpose of, like for our mitigation technicians, when they go into a house that we know is high in radon and they're going there to work, they deploy one right away to measure their exposure in the house. You should never do a measurement for 10 minutes or even a measurement for 1 week and then decide to mitigate your house or decide that it's safe. Because you can measure a house for 1 week, it can show it's very, very low, and then a month later, the radon levels could go up. It is very important when you're doing a radon test, if you're going to measure it in your home, that you test the home for 4 to 6 weeks, according to some of the world, but ideally you want to measure for at least 3 months to determine if your house is safe and you can leave it, or if it's high and mitigation is necessary.
That makes sense. Maybe I'll do a quick Chinese translation here.
Of course.
刚才说了，就说是这个，刚才他说这个几个这种电子的这种显示测试这种设备了，就说是他当然马上就可以给你一个读数，但是呢，这些还没有被正式的被就说是Health Canada 就是加拿大卫生局吧，或者卫生部给认证，但是呢，这种电子显示的这种设备呢越来越多了，市场越来越多了。但实际上，他们的这个有些呢，就是 reading 还是测试还是很准确的。但是他刚才说了一个什么了吧？就说是在你做出决定是否你是不是做radon这个东西减排了的话，不能靠这些短期的测试，你要靠长期的测试，然后给你，因为这个东西的这个含量是一直在变的，所以只有长期的测试才能给你一个准确的这个读数。所以说一般是3个月啊，至少测试3个月，根据那3个月的结果，你才能做出决定，你们就才能做出判断，因为家里的这个东西是含量是高还是低，而不能靠一个就说是这种电子显示，只能靠几天几个小时，这并不具备代表性，只有3个月以上长期的测试才有意义。I'm good, thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Can I have one question, Andrew?
Yes, of course.
If I want to test my house radon concentration, do you have any like equipment recommendation? Like which one is the best for the household use?
So for the best for a household will either be the Alpha Track detector, which is the one at the top left, the little square. Those ones are $56. That's the one that you leave in your basement for a minimum of 3 months, and you send it off to the lab to get the results back. The next one up would be the digital meter, the Crentium Home. That one is also going to give you an accurate number. With that, you still want to measure for a longer period. The benefit of the digital meter is that it will give you a reading in different locations in your house. So for example, say you were to measure your basement and your basement was 205 becquerels per cubic meter. So you were just above the guideline. And then you considered, well, maybe you only go in your basement for 1 or 2 hours a day and you don't spend a lot of time there. In that case, with the digital meter, you can bring it upstairs and you can measure where your main floor is. And if your main floor is also very high in radon, then it's definitely something you want to fix. If your main floor is very, very low, you can calculate out your exposure and determine, well, if you only go in the basement for an hour a day, you're not actually being exposed to that radon very often. So the digital meter, the Crentium Home, I would say is probably my favorite, or the Alpha Track detector, which is those are both the two most common ones.
Do they have any special, like specific distributor for all these radon testing equipment?
Sorry, say that again.
Where can I buy all this equipment?
Oh, so you can go onto our website, which is radoncare.ca. At the start of this presentation, we had a promotion code, and we'll have that at the end of it as well. And that will actually give you 10% off if you wanted to pick up any of the tests. On our website, we carry every one of the tests every digital meter that works well. So you can go through a wide variety of them. Some of the other ones listed here, like the one right beside it, which is the Wave, it's the same measurement device that's in it. It's just as good as measuring radon. However, it also comes with an app, so you can connect it to your phone, and after a few months, it will save the data, so you can see when the radon may have been high in July, and it may have dropped by September. It might go up in December, but you can actually see a chart and the change over time. And then some of the other meters from there, they have Wi-Fi, they have different features as well. Everything that's made by Airthings is the brand that makes them, is very, very good. They just come with different features that are, for the most part, unnecessary, but they are very interesting.
Okay, thank you.
Very welcome.
Yeah, further to that, Andrew, the Alpha Track, the tester, you just mentioned the cost for purchasing the tester. When we send this tester to the lab, would that be additional cost?
So for our testers, shipping to the lab, shipping from here is about $10 usually. The lab fee is included, so that's already included in the price of the test.
Oh, I see. So only shipping is additional.
Only shipping. That's correct. We also, you can also get tests. There's a vicradon.ca. Vicradon is the University of Calgary research. You can also get tests straight from the University of Calgary, but we also use the same laboratory and the same test kits that are used by them. There are different laboratories. Some of them, I mean, like all things, there's some laboratories that are a little bit better, some that are a little bit worse. Radon Nova is widely considered to be one of, if not the most accurate laboratory there is for radon measurement.
By the way, the Airthings a brand from Sweden or somewhere in Europe?
It's from Norway.
Oh, Norway. Okay.
All right. Unless there's any more questions on that. So down here, there's a picture, the picture beside the radon meters, that's charcoal. So the reason I have that as inaccurate, so there are some tests mostly available at hardware stores that's activated charcoal or liquid scintillation. There's a few different short-term single-use laboratory tests that are available there that Health Canada specifically says you should not use. Activated charcoal for a few different reasons can be very inaccurate. It's just not recommended. The only single-use test you should consider if you want to do it that way is an Alpha Track detector. Testing tips. So the biggest step, as I mentioned before, test for a long period of time. I mean, of course, if you tested the radon for 1 month and your radon levels were 5 times the guideline, in that month, you know you have an issue. But in barring extremely high levels, you always want to test for 3 months. And even if the radon is exceptionally high, radon is a long-term risk. So if you measure the radon for 2 weeks and you see a very high number, don't panic. It's not going to do anything to you over the next month or two. It is always a good idea to make sure you have at least 3 months of data in your radon reading before you do anything about it. Yes, radon levels fluctuate. The reason we want to do a radon test for a long period of time is because there's a bunch of things that can change radon levels. Wind can make them go up in some cases, it can make it go down in others. Same thing with rain, same thing with the weather, same thing with the season. So we want to test for a long period of time because it is possible that you test for a week in the summer and your radon levels are at 50, and you test for 3 months in the winter and your radon levels are over 300. The longer term the test, the better it is. And then here we have types of testing at the bottom. And yeah, so that's going over kind of the order. I would say that I recommend. The single-use alpha track is considered to be the best one. The digital meters are not yet certified as measurement devices. However, that is likely going to change in the future for some of them. And the third one we have is real estate. When buying or selling a house, there is a way that we have a professional meter and we can deploy it in the home for a week and we can take a radon reading. Even that is not nearly as accurate as a home grade device like a Carentium home and testing for a long period of time. It is simply the best way that we can get the most accurate reading in the duration of a week. So if buying or selling a home, or especially in terms of buying a home, I recommend buy the home if you like the home, move into it, test the radon once you live there, and then decide if you have to mitigate it. Because there is no perfectly accurate way to get an accurate test in a short period of time.
A question, Andrew. For testing, let's say the ventilation or furnace, how furnace operating may impact the testing as well. Normally, the tester should be put in a kind of in a place where less air flow through. Would that be the general idea?
So the test should be placed, according to Health Canada, in the lowest lived-in level of the home. Airflow is that's one of the reasons tests like activated charcoal are not recommended. Because
对不起，麻烦您能不能 mute 一下？这个好像有一个听众都在讲话，大家都能听见。能不能把那个静音一下？要不然大家都能听见您在说。Okay, thank you.
Should I continue?
Yeah, please. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so activated charcoal can be affected by sunlight. It can be affected if it's in airflow. Alpha track detectors and digital meters, it's not likely to affect it. You wouldn't want to place an alpha track directly in a sunbeam or something like that. But we actually checked this out a little while ago. We sent a whole bunch of alpha track detectors to a few different radon mitigators across the country. And we told them, take them in the same room of the same house and put some underneath the couch and some in a drawer and some on a picture frame and deploy some of them directly in the middle of the room. And we wanted to see exactly how different they were. And when they came back, they were all surprisingly consistent. Meaning when you're deploying the test, you want to test somewhere that's air that you breathe. So my recommendation is always a coffee table, a nightstand, something like that. You do not want to test it in the mechanical room, because even if the mechanical room was high in radon, if the rest of the house isn't, you're not going to be exposed to it enough for it to make any difference. So you want to test somewhere in the house that represents the air that you will be breathing in.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Never trust a free radon test. So there are some kind of free radon test is like a free break inspection, which is to say they're always going to find a problem. If you want to test your home from radon, find a reputable place to get it, where you're going to get the proper type of test. Most of the quote unquote free radon tests that are on the market are companies that are giving away activated charcoal test, which is not an accurate type of test. And they can at times be deployed by the company in ways that they're always going to come back high. Radon testing is not a difficult thing. You can definitely do it by yourself. You don't need someone to come over to your house to do it. Just make sure you have a good type of test, you place it in the correct location, and you test again for a long period of time.
Basically, we're saying free testing always reading higher.
I don't want to say it always is, but I've heard stories of, if you take a radon test and then you put it in the mechanical room, and you put it right above your sump pump, you can have a house that would otherwise test at 50 becquerels per cubic meter, and you can find a spot in that home where it will test over 500. And again, you want to test the air that you breathe. So if they do that, that's not an accurate test. That's not telling you your exposure, but it's possible to test a house that it can be inaccurate.
Yeah. Thanks.
How do you reduce radon? So mitigation options. The most common by far method of mitigation is sub-slab depressurization. That's where we drill a hole through the concrete, we create a negative pressure underneath the house that draws the radon out. So the radon gas is going to come up below your home, and because it has nowhere to go, it's going to find a way to come into your basement. If we drill a hole through the ground and we create a suction underneath, we're changing the path of least resistance. So any radon that comes up below the house will get pulled towards our mitigation system and vented out the side of the home. There are a few other options, but they're very rarely used, and they typically should only be used in the event that nothing else is going to work.
If I could, maybe I'll do a quick Chinese translation here. 他刚才说这种呢，就说是什么最常见的检查的方法呢？减排的方法呢，就在地下室地板上钻个洞啊，从那个地下室混凝土地板上钻个洞，然后往外吸气，就是把混凝土地板下边的空气给吸出来，吸的就是保持地下室地板成为负压，这样的话冬季的就不至于会进到屋里头了。这基本上就是这是最常用的一种减排的方法。is最有效的一种方法。Thank you, Andrew.
And here's an example of what a radon mitigation system might look like. So radon mitigation system, the cost is normally around, for the average house in Calgary, you're looking around $2,500. It takes about a day to install. And again, it's very, very effective. We have never had a home that we went out to mitigate that we couldn't. And where we had to tell the homeowner you're stuck with high radon levels. We have fixed every single home and commercial building that we have ever set out to. Some common problems and misconceptions about sub-slab depressurization. Number one, sealing is an important part of a mitigation system, but is very, very, very rarely, if ever, going to solve the problem by itself. Sealing means sealing the cracks in the concrete. So radon is an inert gas. Radon, if you seal it in one area, it's going to come up into another area. When we do a radon mitigation, one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to seal the concrete slab the best that we can. If the sump pit is open, we're going to make it airtight. If there's any cracks or gaps in the concrete, we're going to seal those up as well. In the sake of the mitigation system, we are not sealing them up to prevent the radon from coming in. Rather, we are sealing them so that our mitigation system works more effectively. Poorly measured systems can be very inefficient and raise energy bills. So when we install a radon mitigation system, the size of the fan is not always the same. The fan, when we do the test, we do a pressure field diagnostic test where we determine for any particular house, how much airflow do we need to use and how much pressure do we need to pull at any one point in the house to create the proper negative pressure underneath the home. If a radon fan is installed in a house that is too small, it's not going to lower the radon by as much as it otherwise could. If a radon fan is installed in a house that is too big, it can cause a lot of negative effects to the house. The biggest one can be very inefficient. They can be loud, they can cost a lot of energy bills and both electricity and heating cost as well. A properly installed mitigation system will be very quiet, will be very energy efficient, and typically will only cost about $50 to $60 per year to have run. Another risk is carbon monoxide poisoning and backdrafting. So in the event of mid-efficient appliances like a mid-efficient hot water tank or a mid-efficient furnace, a poorly installed radon mitigation system and an improperly sized fan can actually pull so much air out of the mechanical room that it can cause your hot water tank and furnace not to vent properly. So again, done correctly, all of these things are measured and there is absolutely no risk of it. But it is just something to say on the importance of installing the mitigation systems the correct way. And there are rare cases where the fan, if it's installed where it's much, much too big, there's actually one case where it froze a water main underneath the house because the fan was pulling so much air from underneath the home that it pulled the air from outside the home down and underneath it, and the freezing air in the middle of winter froze the pipes underneath the house. Health Canada does recommend, so as I mentioned at the start of it, we are certified by C-NRPP. Health Canada recommends for anybody to do either measurement or mitigation that they have C-NRPP certification.
That's important. A few questions, Andrew, here. First one, ceiling. You know, in the basement, in a typical house, the basement, the floor concrete slab have a kind of gap all the way around. Basically, there was gaps between the slab and the footing of the foundation. Are those gaps has to be sealed for the mitigation?
So everything that we can access, we want to seal. In the case of an undeveloped basement, absolutely. We want to pull up, we lift up the insulation, we lift up the vapor barrier, and we seal every single one of those cracks. Now, the analogy I always use is it's like if you're drinking a Slurpee with one of those big straws. If you poke a hole in that straw, it can still work. In the same way that if there's a hole in the concrete, we can still mitigate the house. But the more that we seal, the more efficient it's going to be. So once the mitigation system is working, we have a negative pressure underneath the ground. So rather than the radon going from the ground up into the basement, the air is going to be going from the basement underneath the ground. The more we seal, the less it's going to affect the heating bills. However, if the basement is developed and we can't get to the walls and we're going to have to rip out the basement development, we do not have to seal all the concrete and we can still mitigate it without having to do that.
That means you probably just need a bigger fan, slightly bigger.
We're going to need a bigger fan, and part of the air that we move is going to be lost from the basement, right? So say in the case of a perfect concrete slab, we have to move 20 CFM or 20 cubic feet per minute of air. In the case of a leaky slab, instead of 20, we might have to move 100. And the additional air that we move is going to be air that is leaking, that is coming from the basement, getting pulled underneath the ground and blown to the outside of the house. So all of that air that you're leaking is going to be warm conditioned air that in winter you're going to have to pay to reheat as it comes back into the house.
Yeah, that's right. And also, some new laws. I know probably the new building code kind of ask for a redone wrapping. Would that be the case?
Right, yeah. So since 2016, the National Building Code was updated, and all new construction, it's actually 2010 National Building Code that was adopted by Alberta in 2016. New construction has a few different things in it to help mitigate radon. Number one is a radon roughen, which is a pipe that comes up out of the concrete that typically is in the mechanical room that says radon on it. Number two is there's a vapor barrier underneath the concrete. Number three is the use of radon rock, which is a thick gravel that goes underneath the ground that air can flow freely through. And number four is that all of the concrete has to be sealed. So the floor to wall joint, as you mentioned, and any cracks in the concrete, the builder has to seal up when they build the house. Now, an important thing to mention on that is there is, especially in new construction, there's often a difference between the way things should be done and the way things ultimately are done. So when we go to mitigate a house, a new house with new building code, we actually only end up using the radon roughen maybe 30 to 40% of the time.
Wow.
We always do a measurement and we do a test on it, but we end up installing whichever system is going to be the most efficient. And for a variety of reasons, sometimes the radon roughen and the way that it was put in is not the most efficient way to mitigate the home.
Yeah, I saw some kind of, they tend to in a mechanical room in the corner, very close to the outside wall. Seems like that. That's a favorite place for roughing. I think quite a few roughing in those type of places.
Right. So additionally, one of the interesting things is what is happening underneath the concrete. So the best way for a radon roughen to work is that pipe that comes out of the concrete slab would be connected to a perforated pipe that loops underneath the home. The idea being that you can apply a suction to any one point in the slab, and you can spread the pressure out underneath the entire sub-slab area, and you can spread that pressure out evenly. What often happens due to a misinterpretation of what the code is supposed to be by a lot of plumbers or concrete guys that are putting in some of these mitigation or these radon rough-ins, is that it's a solid piece of pipe that comes out of the concrete, and it's connected to a 2 feet solid piece of pipe underneath the concrete. And the end of that pipe ends up getting plugged up, meaning you can put the biggest fan you can find on that radon rough-in in some of these cases, and you're not going to affect the radon levels whatsoever.
Might take some gravel out from the under the slab.
Right. So if that happens, it's okay, because we just have to drill a hole through the concrete. If the radon rough-in is just a small piece of pipe underneath the ground, it's often much more efficient. We drill a hole in the concrete beside it. We dig out a pit of 5 to 10 gallons worth of gravel. And because we have that large suction pit, we can mitigate the house with much, much lighter pressure, using much less air, which is going to make the system considerably more efficient. And especially, it's going to make it much quieter.
Yeah. Great, thank you. I'll do a quick kind of Chinese summary here. 他刚才说了，就说是这个，就是做滤档减排呢，就是地下室地板那个上面的缝隙都要给它密封上，这样做减排才会有效果，对吧？要不然那个这样效果就不是特别好。就是把地板上的裂缝、地板四周跟那个墙的裂缝都要给密封上，如果能看见的话，就要密封上。还有刚才就是提到了，就说是这个在2016年之后呢，新建的房子一般都有这个建房那会儿，他都把这个管子给做上了。但是他提到了，他指出来有些因为做不规范啊，做错了。因为比方说地下室管子吧，那下边地埋的管子应该是叫 perforated 的，就说是转上洞的，这样空气能进去。有的他做的不规范，他就加一个那个食管子，正常的管子放里面，根本起不到任何作用。刚才讲的就这，如果你们有什么问题的话，也可以用汉语问啊。这个咱们有什么问题就提出来。OK， 你说。
老刘，我问一下，他说这个常见问题的和误解后面最后2个是没太听懂，就是 overlay powerful fans 和最后那个 rare case 什么意思
？Okay, Andrew, the question was on this slide, the last 2 bullet. Would you mind just explain the third one? Let's say overlay powerful can cause backdraft of carbon monoxide. I think I understood because you were suggesting if the fan was too powerful, basically will draw the air, will have a negative impact on the vent of, for example, the hot water tank or the furnace. As a result of that, could causing a carbon monoxide concentration high in that area. Would that be the correct understanding?
Exactly. Yeah.
如果是这样的，if so, I just translate that. 他说是就说是就第3点，为什么会导致一氧化碳呢？他说如果它是这个减排系统里装一个风扇嘛，往外抽，如果这个风扇风力太大的话，你地下室不是有地板上不是有缝隙吗？那个缝隙呢，就地下室里边的空气呢，会通过缝隙进到地板下边，然后再从这个fan呢给抽出去。如果你装的这个地方不对，比方说它会影响到你这个 furnace 了，或者是 water tank 那个排气，知道吗？你的就是不是燃烧的尾气往外排嘛？特别是对那种中效能这种 mid efficiency 的这个 furnace， 它是有烟囱，它如果排不出去的话，这样就是你知道吧？这样因为尾气里边是可能有一氧化碳的，我想这就是第3点。然后 I think I understood the last point as well. You're referring to the rare case like frozen pipe. It's because the fan may be too powerful, so it draws the outside the air, which is the cold air, basically flows through across the pipe, causing the frozen piping. Would that be correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's very rare, although it is a case that's happened before. If the fan is pulling air from outside somehow, and that outside air is very, very cold, it's going to pull the freezing air underneath your home to the mitigation system and then blow it back outside the house. Or that very cold air is going to circulate underneath the home.
我不知道你还需要我用汉语解释一下吗？
我不知道我的理解对不对啊？第3点就是说，就是这个 fans 的那个太大的话，就是说的是
抽力太大了，是吧？
啊，抽力太大的话，它就可以把二氧化碳从地底下抽上来。
不是把二氧化碳从地底下抽上来，就是你地下室的，比方说地下室地板上是有缝隙的，对吧？它抽气呢，抽气是从地下地板下边往上抽的。如果抽力太大的话，就地下室的空气呢，在地板上边的空气会顺着这个缝隙了到地板下边，因为你抽力太大了，对吧？
那不是个好事吗？等于二氧化碳从地底下就出去了吗？
对，这是正常，但是你不能太大了。就是说压力如果抽力风扇太大的话，它就会出现一种什么情况？你把屋里的空气了，就会从地板上面的空气进到地板下边，然后再排出去。这样呢有一个什么坏处呢？比方说在你的 furnace room 地上有个大裂缝，然后你地下室那个 water tank 的排气就成问题了。本来地下室那个 water tank 的排气是顺着烟囱往上排了，对吧？这样就排不出去了，它就给吸进去了。
明白。
吸回来以后呢，它的因为你那个燃烧的尾气排出去，就是屋里的就有可能一氧化碳就多了。这第3点。第4点呢，跟那个其实是一样的，就说是这个原理是一样的。因为那个地下室水管是在地埋的，知道吧？你水管是从地埋进来了，就是如果你抽力太大的话，它有时候会把外边的风，冬天外边的很冷的空气呢给抽进来。你抽进来，如果那个管正好中间有个水管的话，就把水管给冻上。这就是这最后2点主要是讲这个风扇就是这个饭太大的坏处，就是饭是要抽的，但是不能太大。他想说的就是这一点。
就是他们装这个东西的时候，那个饭是很有讲究的，不能太大，太小，
对，也不能太小，太小你就起不到减排作用，太大了会导致一些副作用。说白了就是。
好，谢谢。
Yeah, we are good now, Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so other methods, filtration. So the biggest thing about filtration is that essentially it just doesn't work. There are a lot of filters online that if you look up and you type in radon filters, there's a bunch of things that are going to come up. But radon is an inert gas. There is absolutely no filter in the world that can pull radon out. So filtration should, unless it's a commercial setting and there's somehow absolutely no other case, and even then, these are very rare, filtration should never be the technique that is used to reduce radon. Yeah, and that's pretty much usually where I leave it. You can't filter out radon. There is a little bit about filtering out decay products of radon. It is possible to filter out essentially part of the decay products would lower part of your exposure to the same amount of radon in the air. But again, overall, the main takeaway, radon filtration or filtration should never be the method used for mitigation.
So is the filtration here refers to a filter put in the furnace or in the HRV system?
So it doesn't matter where it is. No, because radon's inert, it can make it through any filter that it is. So whether it's on your HRV, whether it's on your furnace, any filter that's sold that says it cleans out radon, that it isn't true. There is not a filter that is going to be able to stop radon. Another method that's commonly found online is an HRV, which stands for heat recovery ventilation. An HRV is a method, it's essentially the same as opening up a window in your house. It brings more fresh air into your house to dilute the air. So HRVs, if they're already installed, which after 2016, when the National Building Code was updated, HRVs became more common. So if you test for radon and the results come back high, if you already have an HRV installed, it's worthwhile to try to turn on the HRV and let it run more often and see the effect that is going to have on the radon levels. However, the rule of thumb with installing an HRV is if you double up the air change per hour of the house, you can half the radon. So if you take a house and you can imagine how much air is in it, you would need a very big HRV, and you would have to move an incredible amount of air to get a 50% reduction in the radon levels. They're more expensive to install. They use considerably more energy than a mitigation system, and you're not going to get even close to the same effect on lowering the radon levels as you would with subslab depressurization. So for that reason, again, they're used in cases where nothing else will work, but sub-slab depressurization is always the number one. So now just a bit of a summary of what we should do. So what we want to do, number one, we want to test radon in our homes. So if there's anything to take away from this presentation, I hope if you haven't tested your home for radon yet, that you do in the future. The test, as I mentioned, the alpha tracks are as low as about $50 to do a test in your home, and then you know what the number is. If the radon is high, that's when you can give us a call. We do free, no obligation quotes. There are, of course, other C-NRPP professionals in Calgary, Edmonton, and everywhere else that can also help you out if you have high levels in your home. But the first thing to do is to make sure you do that test. And then finally, Health Canada does recommend that a radon test be done every 3 to 5 years. So if you've tested your home 5 years ago and the radon levels are okay, it might be time to do a test again. There's not a lot of data on the change over time of radon levels. However, we do have at least some customers that have told us they tested their home 10 years ago, it was okay. They tested 5 years ago, it was okay. And they tested recently and the radon levels were high. So just to be safe, you want to do another test every 3 to 5 years.
Sorry, every 3 to 5 years refers to with or without mitigation system?
Either way, actually, with or without a mitigation system. I typically tell our customers that if you have a mitigation installed, every 5 years is more than sufficient, but you should still do a check just to make sure everything is running as it was designed to do.
Thank you.
老刘，我想问一下，如果装了那个减排系统的话，它就永远就是不会再升高了吧？不像他刚才说的，如果没有装的话，10年测一次，然后5年测一次，或者最近又给高了。但是装了减排系统，再不会有这种情况吧？
他刚才说的是，我刚才问了，也就是这个问题。我刚才他不是说是，sorry, the question was basically the same as my question. Basically, she was asking, let's say, if her house has a mitigation system already, why retest is still needed?
Make sure the system is still effective. So, for example, if we put a mitigation system into a home today, there's certain things that can change it. If a new furnace is installed, that's going to change the pressure in the house. If new windows are installed, that's going to change the pressure in the house. There's different things that can change over time that are going to change the amount of air pressure that's in the home, and therefore can change the rate of radon entry. So if a mitigation system was designed in your home to work at one point, you can have changes down the road that are still going to affect that. So the mitigation, the mitigation systems can fail. Like our systems, we give a 5-year money-back warranty on, but even with those, we do have occasionally a customer call us after 3 to 4 years where the fan stopped working, the fan became less powerful, or there was a change to their home that required a larger fan to operate in order to continue the mitigation and to keep the levels as low as they could.
我不知道刚才您听懂了吗？还需要我解释一下吗？
他说的那个东西好像还会失败，是吧？
对对，他就说是什么了吧？他比方你现在装了吧，你现在装了，就隔几年了，你家的 furnace 换成新的 furnace 了，或者你的窗户换了，就说这是一个因素，因为它这些都会影响它这个这个东西的浓度。另外再加上了这个减排系统本身呢，它也会就说是这个也会老化或者也会出现问题，所以说这就是为什么虽然你有这个系统，减排系统仍然建议你这个隔几年再做一次测试，这样就更保险一些。
那就随时监控着它的那个装了减排系统的那个压力的那个值，还有个就是注意它那个 fans 会不会那个有问题，然后换那个 fans 是吧？将来。
The question was, Andrew, in the mitigation system in the fan, there was basically showing the pressure differential. That would be indication of the fan was performing or not. would that be give you a good enough indication suggesting the mitigation system is working or not performing? Would that be adequate enough just by monitoring the pressure differential?
So from my experience, I would say 98 or if not 99% of the time it would be. There are though, while they might be rare, there are cases that even if the fan is operating exactly at the same amount of pressure that it was designed to do, the radon levels still could change. So one example that happened for one of our mitigation systems. So we had installed the mitigation system, I believe this was about 2017 or 2018 we put it in. In 2020, the summer of 2020, the customer called us and they said the radon levels, every few days they go up, they go from the 15 that we got the mitigation down to, and the levels shoot up to about 500 or 600. So I honestly thought the customer was mistaken. I thought the meter must have broken, but we sent a technician out to go take a look and to see what the problem was. What had changed was that this individual was an engineer, and like many engineers during COVID, they started to work from home. And they didn't have a home office, so they started to work from their basement. And in summer, they had air conditioning in their house. And when the air conditioning would run, it made their basement very, very, very cold. So what he did is he shut off all the supply air vents. So all of the ducts in the ceiling, you can typically close them so that you don't have any more air blowing on you, which a lot of people do in their basement. Now, if you shut off the supply air in the basement, when your furnace runs, the return air in the basement is still going to pull. So in this case, it was such an effect that when the furnace ran, the return air would pull all of the air to the basement. Because there was no air being supplied, it would create a negative pressure in the basement that was much stronger than our mitigation system was designed to handle, right? And again, this is a rare case. This doesn't happen often, but it's just a case to show that there can be things as simple as opening or closing a vent that can change the way the size of the mitigation system should have to be.
Yeah, makes sense. 需要我解释一下吗？
我大概听懂了，就是因为它在底下装了一个空调，是吧？它所以
不是，
那个压
他说的意思是什么？是因为那个有空调，他主要是他把他这个就说首先了，他说就是您说那种方法99%都是可能的，都是正确的啊，就说是你只要看那个有那个水柱两个有压力差的话，就说明这个饭在工作。正常情况下呢，你说明你这个减排系统是工作的。但是有极少数的情况，就是他刚才举的例子，夏天了，就说有一个人就是在地下室，这个他就把那个所有的出风口就给堵上了，就是 supply air， 就是说你知道吗？就说是对，他因为把这个堵上，就空气进不来了。但是呢，他那个 return air 呢，它还是开着了，所以它那个 furnace 还继续抽，这样子就把地下室抽成负压了。在这种情况下呢 ，furnace 呢造成了地下室的负压，这样的东西就进来了。它这个 furnace 对这个房屋的这个负压的影响远远超出了你那个这个减排系统的这个力量所以说这就是为什么即使在您说的情况，即使那个你看减排系统那个水压力还是在那个水柱还在的话，在这种情况，在极少数情况也是可能导致你的这个地下室的东西排能过高，在某种特殊的情况下。我不知道是不是说清楚了。
明白。他是不是说他装了减排系统可以给你保证5年，是5年的保证吧
？Let me just confirm. Andrew, you just mentioned you have a 5-year warranty.
We have 5-year warranty, yes. In most cases, the houses in Calgary too, we money back guarantee on the actual radon level. There are some cases of some unique homes that we don't have the same warranty, but it is on a case-by-case basis. But the majority of homes come with a 5-year money-back guarantee.
Thank you. 这个对吧？这个说得很清楚，对吧？
对。
对，他5年能确保这个，如果有问题，他
好，谢谢。
Okay, we're good. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. All right, and that's pretty much it. So that was the presentation. If anybody has any more questions, if not, feel free to reach out to us at either our number that was listed at the start, and we'll be listed here again, or to send us an email. There is also the promotion code. I don't have that at the end of the presentation, but perhaps you want to put up your screen before to show that code again.
Sure.
So if anybody would like to get a radon test, that gives you permission to go to our site and you can pick one up. And if anybody has tested for radon and the levels are anything you would that you don't want them to be, and you're interested in bringing them down, we of course do free, no obligation quotes. We can come out, take a look, and let you know what the best options are.
Great. Thank you much.
Thank you very much. I will switch this back over to get you.
Hello, Andrew. Can I have one more question?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you discussed about that already or not. I just want to know, in Canada or in Alberta, do we have any like regulation to see, okay, we have to control the radon level in residential or commercial building in a specific level, like you said, it's like 200, less than 200, like that.
So not yet. It is, we're hoping to get there. So it is now in BC. Whenever a house is being sold, there's going to be a request for what the radon test was. It is not going to be necessary to provide that test, but at least it's going to be a question that is going to start to be asked when a home is water sold. There was a part that before the previous federal or provincial government got in, there was a bill that had passed, and it was through most of the stages, that was going to require all daycares to test. And you were only going to be able to renew the license for a daycare if you could show that your radon levels were low. But the most recent change of government, when they came in, they decided to get rid of that bill. So that went away. So short answer is no, not yet, but it is looking like there will be in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just want to mention the promo code。这就是这个，你如果它这个 code 就是老刘10，都要大写字母啊，都是大写老刘10。如果你要上他网站上购买东西的话，他会给你10%的便宜。我不知道多长时间，就今天这个开始讲座之前讲的说这个老刘10啊，你如果感兴趣的。还有其他的问题吗？If not, okay. Yeah, we don't have any more questions. And again, thank you very much, Andrew, and for the very informative presentation. We really appreciate the time. So coming over to do this.
Thank you very, very much.
那没有别的问题呢，今天就这样了啊，非常感谢啊，再见。Thank you, Andrew. Again, good night.
All right, thank you, and take care.
Bye.
我有问题啊。
哦。
我写上了这个问题。
Sorry, Andrew, are you still there?
我把这个写上了，因为说阿尔伯特省和那个萨斯卡通这2个省的冬季水平高哈，我想问，这冬季水平高，
你如果问的话，他可能已经离开了，对不起啊，你稍等一下 ，Andrew, are you still there? 我看一下，他是不是他已经
啊？那您知道吗？因为我不太懂，就是说什么癌的发病率高？咱们这2个省是什么癌引起？什么癌的发病率高？
就是不，这个我可以回答，我看一下你。
对，我想你可能能回答嘛，我就想问。
对，就是什么癌呢？就说是这个东西只会引起肺癌，别的癌没有影响，他只说肺癌，知道吗？
那咱们这2个省，就是说咱们就这2个省的水平高，对吧？这冬季高，
对，
那是不是明显的就是咱们这2个省得肺癌的人明显就多呢？
他说的并不是，他说的是什么意思呢？就说是我记得那张他说的什么意思？就说是首先呢，回答你第一个问题呢，就是只有肺癌，没有其他的癌，东西只会导致肺癌啊。
OK，
就说是，然后他那张图显示了一个，就说有2点，第一个呢，最高的排第1呢是波兰啊，波兰呢就说是它是指这个就说是冬季的 exposure， 就说是人口，就说是这个影响的人口数量最多的是波兰，就说是它可能是因为这个冬气的含量比较高，所以说很多人呢受冬气的影响，然后其次呢就是阿省跟萨省。 就说是这个是，就说人就是 exposure， 就是受这个氡气影响的人口更多。
咱们就说咱们这个阿省和萨省是在世界范围内
对
属于第2的。
对，好像是我因为我忘了，我现在不能回去看那个 slide， 我想可能他说的是这个意思。第一是波兰，我想是世界范围了，否则然后这个阿省跟那个萨省是第2、第3，我记得他是好像那么个意思。
对，他一开始开头说了一句，我没太注意听。
对，他说了，并不说是并不是按这个得癌症人数的数量，它是只叫 exposure， 就说是人数，就是多少人呢？可能这个百分比吧，就说是比如90%人呢都 expose to 的to radon to 就氡气。我想它可能是指这个意思，就是氡气影响的面儿的比例更大一些。我想他说的可能是这个意思。他正好下线了，这也不好问他，这是我自己猜测，也不一定准确。
现在你讲，起码我知道是什么癌了。我想得什么癌呢？
肺，因为你记得他有一张图，就讲那个粒子怎么打到那个肺细胞上，然后对肺细胞的这个，是因为它为什么只会对肺影响呢？是因为它是通过呼吸的，是一种气体，通过呼吸到肺里头，然后呢，它就那个什么，而且呢，这个它氡气之后它就不行了，因为氡气的衰变时间很快，然后它就变成其他的东西了，然后它就没有这个，只有在通过呼吸，所以说只会导致肺癌。
哦，那懂了。还有一个他说那个测量，因为我们家原来测量过，我记得当时40多哈，但是当时可能就测量了1周。他们意思刚才说要测量3个月至少。
对，要3个月，长期的测试才是一个准确的测试。3个月，至少3个月。
那就是说必须买个设备去了。
对，这就买，他那个挺不贵啊，不到50块钱，买一个就放那3个月，然后送到实验室里边，然后人家给你寄个实验报告，然后再加上10块钱的邮寄费，我觉得很便宜的。
你好，喂，你好 ，sorry， 打断一下，我就是刚才在网站上，然后输入了您的这个 promotion code， 但是暂时是还不能用，是吗？
我不知道，他是今天那个什么，今天这个在这个做这个讲座之前，他好像为了感谢我帮他翻译这些东西，然后他说给我一 code，那这样这没问题，这个 code 肯定是要给你的，肯定是要有效的。你这样，你那个给他发 email，你就说你这个参加了 presentation，就这个 code，现在你能看见吗？如果没有效的话，到时候你跟我说，到时候我跟他联系。然后你这个提的，你说因为你给的 code 是，他肯定会这个肯定会给你的10%。
可能他系统上还没加上。
那有可能是，你明天可以再问一下，如果有问题的话，你可以跟我说，这个肯定是要 honor 这个10%的。
好的，谢谢。而且我看好像是说，他们这家公司是可以免费寄回去的，就是你的这个检测的这个小仪器，就是不是还要自己寄回去吗？寄到实验室去。
好像10块钱嘛，他说是我问他对的，好像就10块钱的shipping。对，我还问了，我专门问了，我说这个是不是只买一个，还有其他的费用吗？他说只是shipping大概10块钱。就是你除了买完他这个东西之后呢，你不是3个月之后你要寄到实验室吗？就跟你的说明，他实验室的检验费用是免费的。但是这个邮寄费你还是要付的，大概10块钱。
好的，谢谢。
怎么他这个测试仪器咱们还看不见数字啊？
不，他就说是长期的测试，对，有那种电子显示的。他说那种叫 alpha track， 就是阿尔法离子的那种测试器，是政府认可的，就是加拿大卫生部认可的那种怎么测？那不是数字显示的，你就放到那儿，它是怎么测试了吧？它就是测那个阿尔法离子打到上面的点数，就放3个月，然后它就是寄到实验室里边，就查那上面的点，就相当于这个东西打到你肺上，就查多少点，点数越多呢，说明你的氡气含量越高。所以它是没有这个没有这个那个显示数字的，只是就说是然后对你就是3个月以后呢，你需要寄到实验室里边，实验室到时候给你发一份报告，告诉你的他根据他查一下点数，那当然他要用特殊的设备来查，查完之后告诉你。
那查完之后他再把这个仪器给你寄回来。
啊，不，记份报告就行。你还要那仪器干，那仪器就不能再用了。
哦，这仪器就不能再用了，只能用3个月。
对，
是那意思吧
？40块钱，你指望能用多长时间？就完就测试完这个样品就完事了。
那我就说，那以后好比说过5年再测，我还得再买一个。
哦，再买50块钱的，5年50块钱，1年10块钱，这个我觉得不算贵吧？这个
他说你们家好比说换个新 furnace， 就那个新的机器，那你应该再测了。那可能你换的时候还没5年呢，可能就2年，你这个机器就坏了，对不对？那你不还得换个新的，还得再测一个啊？他买这个东西等于就一遭烂的，等于是他测完了就不能再使了。
对 ，Alpha Track 是这样的，就说是它有好多种啊，就是这种政府认可的这种就是
只有这一种是吗？政府
对，只有一种，对，不是就是联邦政府认，就是Health Canada 对，他认可就是 Alpha Track，他认为这个最可靠啊，最准确，所以说他这是就是一次性的，不是说是就那个什么
那没有别的，因为原来有中国人说可以租那种，那都没用，等于是。
有短期测试，有那个数字显示了，对吧？它
对呀，有
虽然不
数字显示的呀，对呀。
对，你可以买那种，它有那种叫 AirSync，它不是还指了一下吗？那个你可以在家里放3个月，它也会给你一个读数的，那个你不需要往外寄，你就自己给读就行了。
对呀，我就说嘛，那种可以读的，你放。
那个好像100多块钱，好像170多块钱，因为我买过一个，我从他那买过一个，好像就是这么多钱，100多块钱，他卖的比网上比那个 Amazon 卖的要便宜一些。就是特别你要是买的话，你可以，他今天可以再减10%嘛，你过2天可以用上这个，如果你感兴趣。
你要买那东西就得通过他买减10%是吧？
你好像他那个牌子你在哪儿买都可以，好像哪儿都有卖的，只不过他卖的好像稍微便宜一些吧。好像是这样的。对，我是
他有那种看了数字，我是看数字让人觉得比较心里踏实，要不然他那个东西，你说你给寄过去，万一就说万一寄丢了呢，就白测了。
那你不能这么对，但是那是一种政府认可的一种方式，电子显示的，是这个是它虽然可能也准确，他认为也是准确的，但是并没有被政府完全认可。
我想问一下啊，老刘，就是说咱们现在在咱们卡尔加里，如果买房子的话，你是没办法知道你要买的这个房子有没有东西，是吧？
就说每个房子都有，这个可以肯定的，每个房子都是有东西是每个房子都有。
对，但你
只不过浓度高低不一样而已，是就说是有这个什么对，就说是你如果短期测试是有的我就有这种设备就说是这个你放那儿，但是呢长期的测试才更准确一些。你如果想知道当时的，比方在验房，比方验房2个小时之内的那个平均值，那是有的，但这个值是不是代表整个这个房子长期的这个是你知道最准确的还是做一个长期的测试，这样是比较准确的。也有的人是希望知道当时的这个浓度，所以说也是可以做的，就马上就告诉他至少放10分钟，10分钟以后开始有 reading， 一般要放就是在这个一般验房的2个小时，放那2个小时，就是基本上能告诉你这2个小时之内的平均值，但这个平均值呢，并不代表这个房子真正的长期的这个水准。
好，谢谢。
是不是一般的冬天相对来讲，这个氡气值就高啊？
我也是这么问他的这个问题，我不知道你们注意到了没有？但是他举了个例子，他说他把那个 tester 放到不同的放到抽屉里头，放到那些地方，然后他说这个测试的结果基本上都是一样的。就是我问他的问题就是，是不是在一个通风流大的地方，是不是它会影响它的读数？他说的意思不是这样，他说我放在一个有风流量很快或者没有风不流动的地方。只要在那个位置基本上是一样，在同一个房间里边，那个数好像基本上都是一样
的。他好像说了一句，为什么要测3个月？他说的，因为你可能是夏天测的值和冬天的不一样，冬天有可能高。
那个是什么吗？那个是咱们说的不是，就是那个是就说是这个地下的源头不一样，就说是因为东西是从地下产生的，它季节性呢季节性是会变化的。它进来从外边进来的这个量是在变化的， 我说了，刚才说是进来之后呢，你测试的话，冬天你这个开窗户或者不开窗户，或者开 furnace 或者不开 furnace， 对那个基本上就没有影响。但你说是对的，就是夏天和冬天呢，它的量尽量它读数不一样，不一样的原因呢，是因为地球里边产生的东西呢在变化，它受温度的变化有影响。
那就是说
源头在
也未必就是肯定冬天就是高，对吧？你要说地球地底下产生的，那就 who knows 了。
哦，对对对，并不说是冬天一定高，就是季节性的变化是有的啊。
对，原来我的
因为刚才
冬
你说
天可能蜜蜂所以高，那现在你这么一说呢，看来也未必就是冬天。
对，因为我刚才说了就是这个问题，你刚才说冬天高，我就说是这个什么了，就说是冬天我的理解是你认为是不是窗户都关了，然后这样就浓度就高了。
对，
但是他说的意思呢，并不是这样，他说的并不是这样。所以你有通风量大或者不量大的地方，只要在同一个房间里边，他说的意思，他放在不同的地方，然后读数惊人的相似啊，他好像是对他的理解好像并不是这样。好的，那行，非常感谢，
谢谢
今天就在这儿了啊。那个对我以后呢，这个每个月呢一般会搞一次讲座啊，这个如果你们感兴趣的可以继续留意。好，谢谢，再见啊。
好，谢谢，
谢谢，晚安。
拜拜。